Accused of sleeping with the boss. To preface this, I am a 21 years old female, and this sounds bad, but I'm on the more attractive side, young and pretty. I hate saying that, but I think that it has to do with this whole thing. I need advice. I'm a personal assistant of someone who owns 3 companies. I've only been here for a month and a half. Mind you, this man is very LDS and has a wife and 2 kids. His dad also owns at least 6 companies where I live, so everyone knows who he is. It involves a lot of things and I have a high level of responsibility. Last week I was with a co-worker. She is his aunt, and she is the graphic designer of one of his companies, which mostly consists of her sitting in an office all day. We were driving to Walmart and looked at gas prices and started talking about the price of everything. I made a comment saying, "Yeah, I can barely afford groceries on $18 an hour." I didn't even think anything of it, until later that day at the office. I was walking out the door to leave and my boss was walking in, and he looks at me and says, "Why would you tell X how much you make?" I instantly knew what he was talking about. I apologized and told him the conversation was not even like that. It wasn't even about how much I made. Well, the next day me and him had errands to run and he was talking to me about it, and he told me that I messed up by doing that. I completely understand where he is coming from and I shouldn't have said it. Accident or not, that puts him in a bad spot. Well, he told me that just shows my age. Telling someone how much I make shows my age. Which I disagree, but I took it as he said it and I thought to myself, I'm just gonna move past this. Mistakes happen. After errands we get back to the shop and I notice all the office girls are gone getting lunch together. Well, they get back and I went to lunch and took a nap. I get back and start doing things as I have a lot to get done, and I go outside to where he is to ask him a question, and he tells me, "We need talk." I said okay, and he proceeds to say, "The office gossip is that we are sleeping together and that's why you make more." I didn't even know what to say. I apologized because I feel like this is all my fault. At this point I'm on the verge of tears. He tells me, "I don't know if I can continue having you work here," and then says, "You can either continue out the day and wait for a call this weekend, or you can leave now and I will call you Monday." I didn't even say anything before one of the girls walks out and says someone is on the phone for me. He interrupted me and said, "She is leaving for the rest of the day, I will come take care of it." I immediately grab my stuff and leave. I called my mum and talked to her after and came to the realization that this whole thing is 10,000% illegal. I then call my boss a few hours after leaving and asks him what's going on, because I need to know if I need to get another job or not, because I have bills to pay. He tells me he sat all of the office girls down and told them to mind their business and that the drama will not be tolerated, and the next time it happens there will be a write-up. Part of me doesn't know what to believe because one of them is his aunt. He told me to be back on Monday, but I'm nervous as hell. TIA, any advice on how to handle this going forward? Update, went back today and it was very awkward. We had a meeting and she basically said she made conclusions because she has had an affair and she recently found out her ex-husband SA'd the daughter they had together. She apologized and said it was no excuse. The apology was nice, but it left a bad taste in my mouth. I was excited to go to work before, but now I feel like I can't even talk about anything without anyone getting it twisted. IDK, just kinda wish I would have gone with the other job offers I got before this one. Crazy coworker. Sorry for the long post, but I really need to vent about the bat crap crazy woman at work. I work in dietary in a nursing home, retirement community. Earlier this year we got a new hire, female, late 50s, and it's been one disaster after another. We work in the dining room for the independent living apartments instead of the main nursing home. She's impossible to train, can't follow simple instructions, like wash your freaking hands before putting up clean dishes. If you ask her to do something she doesn't do it. If you ask her not to do something, she does it anyway. She says okay and she'll repeat the instructions back to you, but then ignores what you said. She talks incessantly, and if you don't respond she starts saying When she first started she would insist on washing the dishes, and then at the end of the shift would complain about having to wash the dishes. We showed her how to load the machine, how to tell when the detergent, rinse was running low and how to replace them, told her to make sure the trash went into the trash can instead of the disposal or the dish machine. She's tore up both by shoving butter PKS and creamer cups down them. The trash can is literally right under the counter by the dish machine. She doesn't rinse the dishes and she doesn't make sure they are clean before putting them up. She has barged into a resident's apartment without permission, and the resident found her going through her kitchen cabinets. She was actually allowed into another resident's apartment, but they had to kick her out when she started going through their closets and dresser drawers. She has been pestering several other residents about them letting her see their apartments and harassing one of the housekeepers about letting her into vacant apartments. She spent the first 6 weeks on the job trying to find out exactly where I live. I said I lived about 15 minutes from work, but she kept asking me for the specific address. Did I live alone? Was it a big house? Do I rent or own? Etc. I repeatedly told her no. I'm not comfortable with her knowing where I live, and she doesn't need to know where I live. She even asked the housekeeper I'm friends with where I lived, since the housekeeper has my cell number. She has followed a different coworker home, pulled into her driveway and parked, looking around. I've been either bolting to the car to get the heck out of there before she gets to her car, or if she makes it to the parking lot before I do, sitting in my car for 10 minutes after she leaves so she can't follow me home. She has asked at least 3 coworkers if she can move in with them. She tells them she helped pay part of the utilities instead of paying rent. If you make a phone call on break, she will follow you around listening to the call and then ask you questions about it after. She has to be a part of every conversation going on around her, even if she's asked to go away because it's a private conversation. If you take your lunch to work, you have to try to hide it in the refrigerator, or else she will eat your food. One of the housekeepers is diabetic, so she usually brings her lunch because it's easier to maintain her sugar levels, and this woman keeps stealing part or all of her lunch, even though it's clearly labeled with her name. If you try to correct her and tell her how to do it right, she gets hysterical. She starts screaming she's a good worker and to get off her back and let her work. She was screaming at me one day so loudly with a dining room of residents for just asking her to wash her hands before putting up clean dishes because there was visible food on her hands that one of the residents entered the kitchen and asked if she should call the apartment manager. If you try to tell her to stop asking you incredibly personal questions that she has no business asking, or to stop asking you questions about your private phone call, she starts yelling about how she's just curious and just trying to make conversation. If you clean a counter she's already cleaned, because it's sticky or visibly dirty she starts fussing. All she does is make more work for the rest of us. A large group of residents went to HR about her touching them, harassing them, and barging into their homes because everyone, residents and co-workers, has been reporting her to the dietary manager and the apartment manager, and they have done squat. HR called her into a meeting today and she was silent for the rest of the day. Peace and quiet finally. It was amazing. I really don't know how to deal with this woman. We are assuming she has some kind of mental condition. She said she's on disability, or she just never heard the word no as a child. And we try to be patient with her and cut her some slack, but she's basically harassing everyone she comes into contact with at work, and it's exhausting. I dread going to work any day I have to work with her. Luckily, she only works 3 to 4 days a week, so I'm not stuck with her every day. Anyone got any advice? Pretty sure all HR did was write her up. We tried to get her moved to the main kitchen. We are so short-handed in the apartment dining room and the main kitchen, it's ridiculous, where she wouldn't really have any contact with the residents, but she annoys the department director and the assistant manager so much they don't want her in there. Heck, the department director has gone to hide in the bathroom until someone texts that she's gone because she wouldn't quit asking personal questions. She's been working here maybe 3 months and we're all just physically and emotionally exhausted and done with her. Update: 2 of my co-workers and I went to HR last week about this woman, and today HR lets us know that she thinks the woman's disability has to be autism or something similar. She doesn't know for sure and she's not planning on asking. So instead of writing her up, the rest of us have to be educated about it. Not sure yet what that entails. We have another co-worker who definitely has autism and all of us get along with him. Is not barging into people's room and rummaging through their things or inviting himself to live with co-workers. So yeah, IDK. Is HR allowed to ask if an employee is autistic? There have been autistic people hired at some of my previous jobs, and it was always known by the staff to help them if they need it and be patient with them. None of them ever behaved like this woman. Coworker frames me and gets me fired, but it gets worse. This happened a few years ago, on mobile, and names changed. Quick backstory: I had worked for automotive store for about 4 years as the workshop coordinator. The store repaired cars and sold parts and accessories, and my role was to take care of the workshop schedule and make sure the needed parts were there for the mechanics. I had left automotive store for a better paying job at a different company for 7 months before deciding I hated the new job and went back to automotive store and my old job. The pay at automotive store wasn't as good, but I enjoyed working with the people there. Since I had left automotive store for more than 3 months, I had to redo my probation period, which is 6 months where I am. In the time I had been away, they hired another bloke to help with the spare parts. We'll call him Tom. On to the story. I had been back at automotive store for just short on 6 months, and I had been having a difficult time in my personal life. I had 3 close relatives die suddenly within fairly quick succession, with the last relative being killed in an accident. I kept my boss up to date with these developments, as they may have affected my performance at work. My boss had been understanding at the time. The day I got back from my relative's funeral, I was pulled into a meeting with my boss, who explained to me that my work performance over my probation period was not up to company standards, and my employment was terminated effective immediately. I was understandably upset, and barely holding myself back from crying, so I didn't think to ask what exactly I had done to warrant getting fired and just left the store. I had been, and still am, friends with the head of the spare parts department, Bruce. When Bruce found out that I had been sacked, he was immediately suspicious, and after speaking to me and finding out that I didn't know why I was sacked, he spoke to the boss. Bruce was pretty tight with the boss, so Bossman told him that I had apparently ordered in a number of random accessories for workshop jobs but hadn't ever sold them to the customers, hadn't returned them to our vendors, and they couldn't be found anywhere in the store. They believed that I had been stealing these parts, but didn't have any proof of me doing so. They had a pretty extensive security camera system and couldn't find me walking out with any stolen goods. Since I was still under probation, they decided to fire me and take the loss on the parts. Bruce was certain I was no thief, so looked into the orders with the stolen parts. He found my name was indeed on the orders for the parts, but they had all been made on days when I wasn't at work. I was attending funerals, but had indeed been received into stock by me. As was company protocol, I would process the invoice into the company system, allocate the parts to the job they had been ordered for, then took the parts to the workshop in preparation for the job. Bruce took this info to Bossman, who then looked on their security feeds and found that Tom would make the orders when I was away under my name, wait for me to receive the parts and sign them into the system, then take them from the workshop after they had been moved there. Staff could walk through part of the workshop as a shortcut to the car park at the back of his store, so Tom would just grab the parts on his way to his car at the end of the day, making sure that the mechanics had already gone home and no one saw him. He would then delete the part from the workshop job so I wouldn't go looking for it. Upon questioning and showing him the security footage, Tom readily admitted to stealing the parts and using my name to cover his tracks, gave them a sob story about struggling to pay his bills and stealing the parts to sell for extra cash. He also admitted to lying to Bossman about seeing me walk to my car with the stolen parts, which Bruce hadn't known about previously. Bossman decided not to fire Tom, instead setting up a payment plan with him to pay for the stolen parts and writing him up. I don't know why Bossman was so lenient with Tom but not with me, but Tom was a grade of brown nosser, so that may have played a part into it. Or perhaps I had made other mistakes during my time there that they were going to fire me for anyway, and this was just the straw that broke that camel's back. I don't know. Once this came to light, about a month after I was fired, Bossman called me up to offer me my job back. No apologies, just, your position here is still available, when do you want to come back? By that time I was well and truly done with that company, and had found myself another job that I was quite happy with. A few months after all of this, Tom was caught assaulting one of the female employees, who happened to be Bossman's cousin. I won't get into what happened as it's not my story to tell, but Tom was beaten black and blue before being literally thrown out the door. Tom hasn't been seen in town since.